Welcome, little scientists. It's Miss Gisa. How many of you like learning about dinosaurs? Well, today we are going to learn about creatures that lived before the dinosaurs. In fact, these are some of the first creatures to roam the earth. There was no life on land at the time. Instead, all life was underwater at first. There were jawless fish that looked kind of like this, mollusks, arthropods, and trilobites. Then there was a mass extinction at the end of the Cambrian period, but the trilobites, these little creatures right here, did not die out, and many new species developed during the Ordovician period. Take a look at this beautiful timeline of life. Today, we will learn more about the creatures that lived during the Ordovician period. We're going to read a story called Into the Ordovician: Adventures in the Prehistoric World, written by Andrielle, Swaby, and Jonathan R. Hendricks, and illustrated by Alana McGillis. Welcome to the Ordovician. Earth was a very different world when the Ordovician period began, 485 million years ago. Strange animals lived in the ocean, including many we no longer see today. This book tells a story of Earth's life during the Ordovician period. There was almost no life yet on land, but the seas were teeming with animals. Let's dive in and explore the ancient ocean. If you traveled 485 million years back to the Ordovician period, most of the continents would be south of the equator. Over time, the continents have slowly shifted to the places they are today, merging together and breaking apart. They're still moving now due to the process of plate tectonics. Can you guys say that? Plate tectonics. The continents move at about the same pace as your fingernails grow. In millions of years, they'll be in new places again. Did you know Earth's outer layer or crust is made up of plates that fit together like puzzle pieces? These move around on currents of churning molten rock. Mountains and volcanoes often form when these plates smash into each other. All the major groups of animal life first appeared during the Cambrian, the geological period before the Ordovician. But for a long time, there weren't many animals. In the Ordovician, the total number of species in the ocean multiplied in an event called the Ordovician radiation. During this time, animals moved into many new kinds of habitats in the ocean. Microscopic plankton and larger swimming animals began to fill the ocean water, and the first coral reefs formed. Reefs today are mainly built by animals called corals, but at the beginning of the Ordovician period, they looked very different. The very first reefs were built by single-celled bacteria that gathered energy from the sun, just like modern plants. They grew in layered mud mounds. Mud mounds grew in many layers. Each layer formed as the microbes grew toward the sun, and ocean mud got stuck to their surface. Did you know simple animals called sponges lived near the mud mounds? Sponges are still around today. They pump water through their bodies to catch tiny pieces of food. A 4-inch tall sponge can pump nearly 6 gallons of water through its body each day. Reefs changed a lot over the course of the Ordovician period. Along with sea sponges, other animals like corals, bryozoans, and crinoids became important reef builders. By the end of the Ordovician, reefs supported complex food webs and provided a home for many different animals. This was one reason why so many new species appeared during the Ordovician. You can see here, large front limbs were used to catch prey. I'll show you on this little guy here. You can see They have these to help catch food. Sea scorpions, also called eurypterids, are extinct relatives of horseshoe crabs, scorpions, and spiders. And those are these little guys here, eurypterids. Pentacopterus was the largest Ordovician eurypterid, reaching the size of a border collie, which is a dog, 3 feet long. Its fossils have been found in Iowa. Nautiloids. Let's take a look at our little nautiloids here. Here's one of them. And then we've got another one here. What is a cephalopod? Can you guys say that word? Cephalopod. Nautiloids are part of a large group of animals called cephalopods. They're intelligent, active ocean predators with tentacles and beak-shaped mouths. Squid, octopus, nautiluses, and cuttlefish are all cephalopods that live in our oceans today. Few modern cephalopods have shells, but most of their ancient ancestors did. The largest nautiloids lived during the Ordovician period. Most of the earliest nautiloids had long, straight shells called orthocones. And you can see that here. See this long cone here? Later on, some had bent or coiled shells, and you can see that here. See how it coils here? And you can see that the nautiloids' tentacles grew out of their heads, which is why the word means head-footed creatures. You can see growing out of their heads. Did you know some nautiloids grew to gigantic sizes? They were the largest Ordovician predators. The longest known nautiloid may have reached lengths of more than 20 feet. Oh my goodness, can you imagine swimming next to that? Ordovician trilobites. Over 5,000 species of trilobites lived during the Ordovician period. They came in lots of shapes and sizes, all suited for a different lifestyle. Some were smooth, others spiky, some hid in the mud, while others boldly swam. The world's largest and smallest trilobites both lived during the Ordovician period. And I have a little trilobite you can take a look at here. Did you know Isosceles rex is the largest trilobite to ever have lived? One specimen found in Manitoba, Canada was as big as a house cat. Isosceles was probably a scavenger or predator that spent time buried in the muck on the ocean floor. What's an arthropod? Trilobites are arthropods, the most diverse group of animals on Earth. All arthropods have an exoskeleton. That means they have a skeleton on the outside of their body. What about humans? Our skeletons are inside our body, right? They also have bodies and legs that are divided into multiple segments. There are millions of arthropod species alive today, from spiders and insects to crabs and shrimp. Jawless fishes. So we're going to talk about fish that had no jaws. Touch your jaw. We have a jaw right here, right? So these fish had no jaws. The very first fish to appear in the fossil record had no jaws. There are only a few types of jawless fishes known from the Ordovician period. Astraspis. Its armor plates are made from the same material as shark's teeth. These small fish swam with their mouths open, scooping and slurping bits of food out of the water. Moving bony plates inside the mouth help the fish suck in and grab pieces of food. Most early jawless fish had bony armored plates growing from the skin around their heads. Many are thought to have lived in the mud or sand at the bottom of the seas, rivers, and lakes. Look at this little guy right here. He's named after an Australian Aboriginal tribe, and his name is Arandapsis. Arandapsis is the oldest jawless fish, appearing 480 million years ago. It had a streamlined body and no fins. It probably swam like a tadpole. Secabombaspis fossils show a sensory structure, the lateral line system, which all fish have today. The lateral line detects movement and electricity in the water. Did you know jawless fish are still around today? There are two living jawless fish, the lamprey and the hagfish. Lampreys and hagfish are parasitic scavengers and feed on other animals, both alive and dead. Every branch of the tree represents a different group of species, some living and some extinct today. Branches that connect to or split off from each other show closely related groups of species. Every so often, a new species with new features evolves, starting a new branch of the tree. Trees like this one are used to show the relationship between living things. Just like a family tree shows you the connections between your relatives, an evolutionary tree shows you the path of evolution between these sea creatures. The first land plants. At the beginning of the Ordovician, life teemed in the ocean, but the land was a barren, rocky place. About 470 million years ago, the first plants appeared on land. These plants, called bryophyte, evolved from green algae that lived in fresh water. They might look small and scruffy, but bryophytes, like liverworts and mosses, helped pave the way for land and life. Did you know bryophytes are non-vascular plants? They don't have stems, roots, or leaves. They also don't have vascular tissue, which carries nutrients and water and other kinds of plants. Phytoplankton are microscopic photosynthetic organisms that live in the water. Some of these are algae, which are related to the ancestors of land plants. Early bryophytes changed the environment and landscape. They broke down the rock to form soil, added more oxygen to the air, and eventually provided food for animals. These ancient plants are still around today. When we look at the ground, we can see the first pioneers of a harsh world. Liverworts. Liverworts are the most ancient land plants alive today. They first appeared 473 million years ago, and you can still find them today on wet rocks or even in flower pots. Liverwort spore fossils found in Ordovician rocks provide us with the first clues about land and life. Bryophytes absorb water directly through their outer layer, so they need to live in a moist place. Bryophytes can't get very large. They spread out low along the ground and grow in clumps. Mosses. These hardy plants can live where others can't, especially on rocks and nutrient-poor soil. They grow in thick carpets. There are over 12,000 moss species alive today. Some early plants were similar to mosses, but the first moss fossils aren't found until long after the Ordovician. You can find moss, especially on rocks, even today. Maybe you can go out and look for some later. The Richmondian invasion. Cincinnati, Ohio is an amazing place to study Ordovician sea life. Here, many layers of rock record an event called the Richmondian invasion, named for the rock layers it occurs in. During this event, changing ocean currents carried the floating larvae of over 60 animal groups to the area. During the Ordovician, brachiopods would be the seashells you'd find on the beach. Did you know brachiopods are marine animals that have two shells called valves? They look a bit like bivalves, but their internal organs are very different. Brachiopod larvae can swim, but they can't move as adults. Brachiopods are much less common today than they were during the Ordovician. Changes. Both corals and brachiopods are kinds of Richmondian invaders. Before the invasion, there were no corals in ancient Cincinnati and only a few brachiopods. Afterwards, there were many. The invaders caused some native species to go extinct, but they also made the ancient Cincinnati ecosystem more diverse. Tabulate corals always grew in colonies made up of corallites. A single polyp lived in each corallite. Some rugose corals had horn-shaped skeletons with ridged walls. Others were colonial. Brachiopods feed by filtering small pieces of food out of the water. The changing climate. Earth began to cool at the end of the Ordovician after 40 million years of warmth. A huge ice sheet formed and grew to cover much of Africa. We know this from glacial features left behind in 445 million year old rocks from the end of the Ordovician. Scratch marks and sediments are left behind when glaciers slide across the land. What caused this cooling? Earth's continents move because of plate tectonics. During the early Ordovician, an ancient island chain crashed into the side of North America. Huge mountains formed from the collision. These ancient mountains are part of today's Appalachians. The volcanic rocks that formed the mountains eroded quickly, transporting important nutrients for life into the ocean. Life explodes. Life in the ocean flourished thanks to all the extra nutrients. Marine life used the carbon and nutrients in the water to grow their bodies, shells, and skeletons. When they died, their bodies and skeletons were buried, trapping a lot of carbon in the floor sediments. Now, less carbon was available to make the climate-warming gas carbon dioxide. With less carbon dioxide available, Earth's climate quickly cooled. Mass extinction. Global cooling at the end of the Ordovician period was responsible for the extinction of nearly 85% of Earth's species. Most of these lived in the shallow waters. How did this happen? For most of the Ordovician, life flourished in warm, shallow seas. Then the world started to cool down. Water from the ocean turned into glaciers, which made the sea level go down. Earth's sea level dropped by several hundred feet. Warm-loving creatures lived in shallow seas died off, but cold-loving creatures survived and thrived. Eventually, the ice started to melt and the world began to warm up again, killing off the cold-loving species. Many brachiopods, cephalopods, corals, and trilobites died out. Earth at the end of the Ordovician. Life on Earth took several million years to fully recover. The 15% of surviving species went on to populate the Silurian period. Overall, the world didn't change too much. The survivors entered the Silurian period. Many of the survivors had similar lifestyles to their Ordovician ancestors. In the end, not too much changed, except for us. We'll read more about the Silurian period in our next book. In the back of this book, you can keep exploring. There is information about the trilobites, the brachiopods, the cephalopods, the gastropods, the graptolites, green algae, sponges, corals, and the scientists who are doing this cutting-edge research. I hope you learned so much about the Ordovician period. I can't wait to continue this journey to learn more about these creatures. See you next time, scientists. Thank you for joining me today. Remember to like and subscribe to support our channel.